ambassador for us. So I was often invited to Paris Fashion Week, and they asked me whether I could just invite some celebrities or fashion personalities to open a Weibo. And so I started just with my iPhone to take some videos of them saying hello to Weibo. And slowly, more and more brands reached out to us to be able to also do the Chinese market strategy, a little bit enhance their PR and social media strategy. So that's what I did in China. And here, I started last year my company to a studio here, and slowly I also moved into more into entertainment. So first of all, creating my first feature film, because as an artist I have done a lot of shorts that have been already to many prestigious festivals, so I feel as a research it's time for me to be able to do something more on a longer length as an artistic research. And second of all, also tapping into the success of being also an influencer. I also started a clothing brand, which is more of a platform of collaboration with different personalities, institutions, and other brands as well, which is called Global Intuition. We just launched with Window, with Swarovski, and at Fred Segal on Sunset in July, and then we're preparing a series of other events in Paris and also throughout the United States. And at last, I think trying to benefit a little bit of my brand capital, I started also a new company which is called Into the Sun Entertainment recently, and our first project is to do the sponsorship of a David Lynch festival, which just took place in LA this past weekend, the Festival Disruption. And so we put together the sponsoring by bringing some high-end brands such as Bulgari, Shiseido, for which I'm a global ambassador for, the new makeup series, and also with Trussardi, which just launched a chocolate and wine lifestyle brand, which is called Lalou. So we did this together with the David Lynch team and the foundation, and we also work a little bit on the digital content creation of the festival, spread it out in the net space.
You're a busy woman.
Yes,
yeah, definitely. Well, Alexandra, speaking of brands and partnerships, I mean, you come from traditional, but then you migrated over to digital, but can you speak to more about that relationship and
Sure.
all that?
So yeah, I spent most of my previous career in kind of a traditional advertising agency, and there you really oversee kind of all facets of marketing. You look at all the channels and you look at creative to kind of fill all of those channels. As a part of that influencer and partnership, I was always very drawn to that piece. I remember we were working on a project to launch a new vehicle, and we were trying to kind of gamify a virtual test drive experience. The vehicle was for a much younger audience than the brand had ever worked with. So what we did was we partnered with a musician that was very much in that demographic. His audience very much kind of mirrored that demographic as well. In addition to having him kind of think through the soundtrack for the experience, he actually helped with the creative direction of basically the entire thing. So what that got us was at the end, he felt like a wonderful feeling of ownership towards it, and he went above and beyond to support the launch overall. So I think to answer your question, what got me to influencer, I would say is that I think these relationships for a brand can really humanize a brand. And I think in addition, it can really give brands new opportunities to talk to different types of people, get into different industries, and just have new opportunities than they would without those relationships. On the flip side, I think from a talent perspective, it's really, really wonderful to have a big brand support the creative endeavors of talent. So I think from both sides, I was kind of drawn to that, and that's kind of led me to where I am now.
Awesome, and we'll speak more to that balancing act later. Yeah. But Sam, you also come from traditional, and you migrated over. What brought you to this side?
I was with one of the big three-letter agencies, and with any large organization, it takes a while to kind of move the needle. And it was like the end of 2013, and I kind of saw what was going on with Vine and Instagram, though I didn't start one myself till much later. I knew that it would just take too long to kind of get the whole company. They wouldn't listen to me. I was just an assistant to kind of figure out, hey, we need to jump on this. And so I left to join a small management company that was at the time one of their biggest clients was a dog Dinky the dog, who made a lot of money. And I saw an opportunity, not for just the money, but to let, it's like going to a showcase back in the 70s and 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, to find a good new artist. Now I could just go to the internet. So I did that.
And speaking of going to the internet, Drew, as the CEO of TubeFilter, the creator of Streamies, what prompted you to start? Because you've been in this industry since the beginning. So, like, what was that process? Like, hey, this is going to be huge.
Well, like Sam, I was also in the FBI. I don't know why we're beating around the bush, but seriously, I was working at an agency, actually, legitimately, and I was in the department that was focusing on music videos and commercials, so short form content and talent in telling stories in short formats was really what we were specializing in, and that quickly was very close to moving over into the internet because the confines of the technology at the time, you could only upload short clips, and so I think that's sort of how the form factor evolved, and we saw some amazing creativity given those constraints. You know, you have an artist constraints, and creativity blossoms within that medium, like black and white photography, for example. So there was such creative output on the internet, and it was all over the place, and it was really wonderfully representative of many different voices that normally you wouldn't see in big mainstream productions in television and movies. And I mean, now 10 years later, yes, I feel like the culture is catching up, and there's been a imperative for inclusivity in entertainment, but at the time that was just sort of the natural landscape in online video. And so that was very exciting to me and my partners when we started TubeFilter, and we started taking a very professional look at online video. Even though nobody was making money, there was no profession, there was no industry, but there was a great potential there for people who were seriously trying to express themselves directly to audiences through the internet. And so that just snowballed from there, and about a year after starting TubeFilter, or within the year, we created the Streamy Awards to create a spotlight to shine just attention on, or we created a platform to shine a spotlight on just the best, or some sliver of all the amazing work that's happening. And so we've continued that tradition now in its 8th year on the Streamy Awards, where we're trying to again celebrate all the diverse voices that are online.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you guys are all up here because you're obviously very successful at what you do, but I want to kind of dig in a little bit more into how one achieves that success, because it's not as simple as, hey, start a YouTube channel and then you're going to be famous, as my mom thinks. She's always been like, you should start a YouTube channel. And I'm like, Mom. But I want to talk more about like what it really takes from behind the scenes to be successful. And I want to start with you, Lynette. What have you seen from your own experience and those around you to actually build a successful brand?
Yeah, I think from the creator standpoint or the talent standpoint, for me, it was a matter of being unapologetically myself, learning that telling your story is a really vulnerable place to be, but really the way to resonate with an audience. And we're seeing such a shift in how powerful this sort of community has become, because we've been nurturing these relationships for now, geez, it's going to be 6 years for me in January. So some of these people are literally like family. So it's a really unique, and obviously it's nothing we've seen before, and obviously we'll get into that later, but so for me it's just taken one step in front of the other, just like really pushing myself to go, okay, how far can we take this thing? And but balance, because the mental health situation is obviously a huge topic of concern for me. So it's been an interesting dance, but I'm learning.
Awesome. And Yuzao, same question for you.
I don't have a YouTube channel, but
Right.
I think the idea of sharing your life, and I think it's important to do it naturally, and like you say, it should be also dosed for the mental health. And in terms of your question about building an international presence, I think in each country, in a way, you start all over again, because the audience is different, and the taste is different, even the image kind of angle and the storytelling is different. For instance, for Chinese market, we tend to write a little bit more about, if I just say, oh, this movie David Lynch, maybe not many people know that. As versus in New York, I mean in New York or in LA or in the US or in Europe, we assume that, you know, people know his work. So I just think it's a tailor-make for each market. The discourse is really important.
So is it important to study the audience, the market? And anyone can jump into this question, but like, is it not just throwing something to the wall and seeing what sticks, but really exploring and studying?
I personally am against that,
Yeah.
and because I'm not an influencer as a profession. I became one for what I write and how I talk about what I do, but I know many people study the graphs and statistics. I never look at them as a personal choice because I want to be authentic for what I'm saying, and not because this post had more hits because I was posting
Right.
a bikini or something. So I just want to be really as authentic as I can.
You're nodding your head, Lynette.
Yeah, same kind of conversation. We were talking about it earlier before we walked in, of just, I'm really grateful to have been a little bit older. I had a decade-long career before getting into YouTube, so I'm really grateful for that. But what I do get encouraged, or what I look forward to pioneering, is what we were talking about earlier, just creating more of a shepherdship or mentorship program for younger talent, because I think that they're coming in so young, not having ever worked before a job in their life. I mean, they're saying there's a YouTuber that's 2 years old, so this is all they're gonna know, which is okay, but there is definitely a conversation or just dialogue that needs to happen. I'm on set all the time, and I just see how different talent reacts towards more of the traditional type of even just production team with an entire crew, and there's definitely a concern for me just to see, and I tell all of the girls that I mentor, be a joy to be around and easy to work with, and you'll go really far in this industry, because it is, I mean, it takes an army, and so it's one big team.
Yeah. And Alexandra, can you speak to that? It takes an army, and you're kind of building that army from behind the scenes. So how does that work? Juggling both sides.
I would say, I mean, from a brand perspective, I think we always recommend that we talk to quite a few different types of people. We talk about different kind of archetypes of influence. So there are the people that have a very kind of large influence online, but then also offline. I think there's something to be said for that talent manager who has the ear of, you know, all the people in Hollywood, or someone who is just has a massive social following or massive reach. You want to kind of talk to all different types of people and really kind of be able to spread the word that way.
And Sam, as someone who has the ear of many, like, how do you make sure that they're on the road to success? Like, do you help guide them, or what is your relationship to their trajectory?
Well, when we reach out, or we don't really reach out much, a lot of it is referral based, right? So there's accountability there on either side. We've only really scouted 1 or 2 clients, but you know, we're not the first to live, we're not the last. I was an English lit major, and one of our Shakespeare professors said that, and it's true. I mean, nothing has really changed. It's just the avenues, the vehicles through which we get media, but that age-old sense of storytelling and being authentic, as everybody else has said, has not changed. And so I look for authenticity, and then I just facilitate that growth, but I don't try to guide them off of any track that they're already on, just try to make sure they're on the right track. You know, I mean, I'm a fan of our clients, you know, tried and true, so that's important. And it's just being a fan of kind of what you're doing and looking at the landscape, seeing the format, not really changing reinventing the wheel, but maybe putting a different rim on it. You're redressing a mannequin. So if you're a foodie YouTube channel, you know, how is your channel different than everybody else in the landscape? And I kind of push clients to find their voice, if they don't already have it established, or they just need a little guidance. So I'm not really there to change much, just to facilitate the growth and natural growth.
Right, that's awesome. And authenticity seems to be a common theme throughout. So the takeaway from today, authenticity.
Because the alternative is so transparent. Like, it's so easy to see through, I'm just trying to do what this guy did or that girl did, so.
Well, on that note, I mean, when a creator is working with a brand, right, we know that they're getting paid. The FTC now makes you disclose with hashtag ads. So is there a disconnect between authenticity and a brand deal, a brand partnership? And anyone can speak to this.
Yeah,
Out of my contracts.
I think it's funny. I was talking with David Dobrik, who's a big creator. He's actually the most nominated creator at the Streaming Awards this year. He, kind of came out of nowhere. He's a breakout creator, winner from the last year's Streaming Awards, and now he's sweeping the nominations. And we were at the IAB New Fronts West, which is a meeting between content creators and brands, essentially. We hosted the first ever Streamy's Brand Awards at this event, and David was talking about how authenticity is really important, but he's like, if you sell cheese sticks, I can sell cheese sticks. Like, I don't have to necessarily love cheese sticks in order to work with you. I think that it is a business, and I think one of the big challenges to being successful in this industry is really understanding what your value is and what your worth is. And it can be very difficult to stand by that perspective, especially since your peers can be undermining you. And although it seems like there's a huge market out there in terms of all these creators and all these brands, everything is so siloed and there's no conversation within each strata that everyone has to kind of start from scratch and build their own value. And just now, agents and managers are now like turning the corner in terms of they're getting into their half decade or their decade of work, and they've seen enough deals to understand what's a real deal and what's not. But that only happens one at a time. These managers aren't necessarily talking to one another. There's no standardization. So it can be very, very difficult for you to say, okay, this is what I'm worth, and then just not get any work, and then be undermined by somebody who's, you build up a career, you build out some value, and then some newcomer comes onto the block who doesn't understand what the expectation should be, and allow themselves, from one perspective, to get exploited, really. And the brands, are just eating that up. And I feel like that's part of the mission of what we're doing with TubeFilter is, with our news, is to disseminate information that can be useful for creators and create some sort of commonality among creators in terms of standardizations, in terms of what your expectations are when you're on set or when you're working with a brand. It's still very much like, I hate this phrase, but it's still very wild and very Western.
Thank you.
Saying exactly.
I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, I mean, as SAG-AFTRA, right, we definitely appreciate where you're coming from, and we also feel that there needs to be a baseline, a standard in which everyone can then rise and excel, because right now it is the Wild West. And so we are also working on making sure that people are not exploited and are paid fairly, but we are understanding that this area is still very much growing and fluid. But Alexandra, do you want to speak about how a brand might be having one expectation and the creator might say, I'm worth this much? Like, how do you mitigate between the two expectations?
I think at the end of the day, it is a business, so we are always going to pay people. We have to pay. But I think where the value comes in building longer term relationships is that when the creator does start kind of talking about a product, it just feels more organic to what their narrative already is. So I know we talk a lot about authenticity. So building these long-term relationships and having them that we can tap into just helps from an overall standpoint, and that everybody kind of wins, and that the brand feels comfortable about the fact that they're pairing with someone that they know that they truly work with and they're an authentic user, and that the talent feels comfortable that they are there to support them and treat them, with the respect that they're worth.
Yeah. Awesome. And one last thing on this topic. I mean, Drew, you've seen creators rise and fall, like in your whole time of just watching the whole industry. What are some of the
In my many
mistakes?
10 years in this industry.
That's a long time in this world.
Yeah, it's
That's like a
70
dinosaur.
years in internet years.
But I mean, do you see creators or brands mess up? Have you seen that happen? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples.
Flat tummy tea.
Wow. I mean, there's first, I think there's so many different ways to mess up, so I don't know exactly which question you're asking, but there's been some recent controversy. You can read about it on TubeFilter about some folks in the beauty space who were pushing products as authentic endorsements that weren't exactly that. And it's so funny because when the FTC was talking about that risk, we were like, oh my God, all right, old man, you don't know what you're talking about. It's fine, we can work it, brands, authenticity, it's fluid, this is the internet, like, sorry. And then this huge thing came out where these people were promoting a product that they clearly didn't believe in, and it came out, it was messy. And the consequence was that the consumers were hurt and the creators were hurt. It was really damaging. Other ways that creators can mess up is about the burnout thing. I think that's really, again, about understanding what your value is so that you can pace yourself in a way that's sustainable. That's also really important too, because if you're working, you're saying, okay, I'm getting this amount of money per video, then I'll just make 10 times as many videos per week and make 10 times as much money. Easy, done. But it doesn't, there's diminishing returns there, and it's been really difficult and really hard on creators. And in fact, the topic of mental health is something that's really part of the internet and online video culture and zeitgeist this year for this very reason. People are isolated as creators. They're overworked. There's a lot of creative demand and stress and performance. There's those numbers right there that are right in front of your face, which can really, you can equate to the quality of your product and your self-worth as a person. So, we have, I'm sorry, I'm plugging Streamies all the time, but we have, on Thursday, we're doing a special edition of the Streamies just about social good called the Purpose Awards at the Streamies. It's the second year that we're doing it, and it's followed by a mental health creator summit that we're partnering with Ad Council to put on and invite creators. You guys should definitely come, creators. And it's really addressing these facts about the issues of mental health, and particularly the responsibility you feel as a creator towards your audience and their mental health, because every creator has a story where they talk about, someone came up to them and said, oh my God, you saved my life. I was going to kill myself, but then I saw your video, and you're like, okay, I'm definitely uploading next week. I'm not going to take a break, because it's a lot of pressure. So I think I'm rambling now, but there's a lot to navigate in this industry. So in terms of like messing up, is like a nice way to summarize it, but it has to do with your business, your personal life, your strategy, your worth. It's your life, and there's a lot of different ways to fall off the edge on that.
Yeah, no, and speaking of burnout, I mean, TubeFilter did a piece, but Variety did a recent piece, and so did The Guardian, and it is very much in the zeitgeist. It's something that SAG-AFTRA is really looking at, because we do offer health insurance to our members, and they can get mental health resources through us. So we're like, hi guys, you should have this resource. But I mean, speaking of burnout, is it something that you as creators experience or see happening in your circles? And like, how are people?
Yes.
I think they go out of fashion, just they don't become relevant, some of them.
And that's stressful.
No, it's not stressful. I just think it's a natural selection, like everything in life. And some of them, they are very hip at some point, and then after a while they become not so relevant. There are new people come in and beat them up.
Yikes.
Yeah, I think that it's been I'm such an observer, so I love this industry, but I'm always in the back of the room, and I'm always the one, I'm a, daughter of a sleight of hand magician, so you can't get anything past me. But I'm always watching, and I love to just watch and see, and so some of the concerns that I've had is just, again, understanding business. A lot of these creators are just learning, and they need to understand business, and I'm so grateful for my husband who has a business degree. He's taught me so many things to understand value, like you guys have talked about, but then also how to delegate. And so I see that so many creators they wear every single hat. And I'm going, no, guys. I mean, obviously, we were talking about Michelle earlier. Michelle Phan started Ipsy, where I'm at now, and she knew how to delegate. She knew how to create a team and sustain a team. And that's, now she's kind of moved out of being a content creator and more into like more business side of things, which she was always so wonderful at. But she was a huge inspiration for me to just understand it takes an army, like I've already said before, but you can't be all things to all people. And so it's a really, again, delicate dance, because, and that's where I'm at now, of just really understanding, okay, it's been 6 years, I need to pivot, and there are cocoon phases, and that's okay. So sometimes I think creators go through this thing where I have to upload on this weekly schedule. 6 years, I'm going to be 32. So I've gone from, 25 years old, 24 years old to now married and, building a marriage and how to balance that and all of these things. And I went through a serious time of burnout. One of my managers is in here from Ipsy. She knows. It was a shit show, you guys. And I was going, oh my gosh, how do I balance all of these things? And it really was a matter of being vulnerable and being honest and just saying, hey, I need to take a step back. I need to reassess. So that's why I really encourage not only my audience, but also fellow friends and content creators to do self-development work. So that's where I spent a lot of this last year going into workshops, going into, of course, therapy sessions, but I'm talking about just real self-development, emotional intelligence, learning how to really grow as an individual, and that's what's going to create a sustainable career. So it's, full integration, inward and outward beauty. The outward stuff washes off. So what are we left with when you have the inside stuff?
Yeah.
Important, very important topic to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel the passion. And Sam, what about you with your clients? Like, are they experiencing burnout? Or
I think the key word Lynette just said is career. I mean, you're foregoing the job in the cubicle and having to go to the brick and mortar physical office structure, but you still have to, we have our clients set schedules, Monday through Friday, basically from whenever they get up. Sometimes it's 1 p.m., but, basically Monday through Friday, we do some work, whatever that is. If that's meetings, you're basically working around my schedule, so I'm setting meetings, you're coming, and that's it. At night and on the weekends, I expect the creators to have fun and create and just have fun and being themselves. We try to foster an environment where it's seen as a partnership, where we let the creators handle 50% of the business, which is the creative, and then we handle the business, which is the other half of it. And we make it so they don't have to worry about anything. Talk about delegating, Lynette said, it's true. Just look out in the emails when you get reached out to, if they're looking to sign you. Make sure it's not from a Gmail account. Make sure you vet them. Make sure they didn't just, leave Panera Bread as a, general manager. You got to find people that really understand how to get you before a bigger audience, how to help you out, and that kind of requires seeing yourself as part of a workforce. You're in an artistic community, but if you set schedules for yourself, kind of calendar your weeks and give yourself time to, hey, I'm working today, or I'm working for this block, and then I'm going to create later, you'll find that you'll fall into a pattern that just kind of works. And, like I said, you're not going to a building, but you're still a workforce member.
Yeah. And Alexandra,
That's key to remember.
Are brands receptive to the fact that creators are having to juggle so many things all at once? And
Yeah, absolutely. I would say what we usually do is we encourage our clients to kind of organize their content streams so that they're almost supporting the creators in narratives that they're already talking about, or it's something that a creator brings to us, an idea that they want to do. So an example of that would be Pizza Hut's one of our clients, and they were looking to support one of their new product launches over the summer. It's like this crazy pizza with cheesy bites all the way around the edge. It's delicious. But anyways, so they wanted to talk about that, and we are in constant communication with what we call the Pizza Hut tribe. So that's all of our different influencer relationships. And a cartoonist, she's this wonderful cartoonist. She does these Instagram cartoons about kind of a day in the life for a girl these days. She came to us with an idea where she wanted to do a whole content series around self-care Sundays. Made total sense for her audience because it was kind of a very Gen Z millennial focus, and it made Pizza Hut feel very relevant and kind of cool. So Pizza Hut loved the idea. We worked with this content creator. She put together this whole content series. It was super well received. We gave her, in addition to being paid, we gave her everything that she would need for a self-care Sunday with pizza. So she got pizza, face masks, candles, everything that you would need. And the content did great, and everyone was super happy. And I think the idea is that we get brands and we organize the brand so that we have all of these different messages that we know that we need to communicate throughout the year, and we're flexible and we're able to communicate via the influencers in ideas and ways that they're already bringing to us and that they want to do.
right, again, it takes an army, right?
An army.
Yeah, yeah, and collaboration and structures and-
Exactly.
and communication seem to be very key in the success. So speaking of ways to make a successful career, I want to talk about kind of the dark side a little bit of being in the public eye, excuse me. And, one of the things that we're seeing is that because it's the Wild West, there's a lot happening. So I want to talk a little bit about how creators can protect themselves, and this goes to brands who are also aligning themselves with creators. When someone, a fan, let's say, rips off your likeness and associates it on their own channel and monetizes your content, and things like that nature. I mean, is that something that you guys are aware of, are concerned about as managers, as reps, as creators? Speak freely to the topic. I'll let you start, Sam.
Are you talking about asset, like you said?
Anything, yeah.
Stolen content?
Yeah.
Well, any of the good MCNs should have a good like back-end department where they'll do asset protection, where they'll kind of like search through the internet daily looking for any usurped content, and then they'll go in and place claims against that on your behalf, usually for a hefty percentage. But you do, if you've got a lot of content out there, especially that kind of goes viral, or maybe you've got a guy that's aggregating, they call it aggregating, they're basically stealing your content, work with an MCN that has a good asset protection plan in place for you. I mean, that's how we combat that.
Mm-hmm.
And Google Alerts, I get the videos that are stolen, and I just send them right over to the asset protection team, and it's claimed within an hour.
Awesome. And then from the creator perspective, is it something that's on your radar? Like, I should be aware that these things are happening around me, or you have people that take care of it for you?
I think, for me, being an artist, foremost, I'm aware that, for instance, not just other influencers, but also other artists can copy your work, and brands, luxury brands, and they take your idea, make it very fast into their own image. So I just think we just have to keep on creating, and I'm personally against looking at the negative things. So I try to always look at the positive, and it's just part of the industry. It's better to be copied than not to be copied.
That's true. Yeah, I may have a really interesting answer for you guys, because I saw that my managers just walked out. So, no, this is good. So I'm actually signed with a company that I've had to be careful as the creator to not share my ideas full. I know my audience. So I, in the past, have come up with these big ideas, and then lo and behold, I get an email, and Ipsy goes, "Oh, we're gonna do," and I was like, wait a second. So I had to hold my energy and really go in and be firm and be like, excuse me, you guys know that you heard me talking about this, and that, and then it was dealt with. But that's been a huge concern of mine at certain points, because I was going, oh great, I have to know who I'm talking to and where that seed was planted, to now that came to full fruition, where this was a deck made and now this is happening. And I was going, all right, well, it's flattering, obviously that was a good idea, but also, again, being bold, using my voice, knowing my value, and really going in straight to the top, straight to our founder, and just being like, hey guy, like, this can't be happening. I want to feel safe. So in all aspects of being a creative, of course, there's no lack of ideas. So it's just knowing your audience, knowing who you're pitching that to. This is a different side of the question, but really interesting stuff that's happened. And again, so much learning over the last 6 years that I've just been going, wow, protection on all sides is really an interesting topic.
I've had my likeness used in a way that I didn't anticipate. If you search, how do I know if I'm rich in my city, the image of the rich guy is me. And I was dressed up at a costume. I was in costume at a party. It was like a polo party where like everyone gets dressed up, and I'm holding a glass of champagne and a cell phone, and I'm looking pretty douchey. And then basically that was put on Facebook. It must have been a promoted post, because it was blasted everywhere. And my friends were like, I think this is you, Drew. I think this is you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but like I signed a release because I was allowing myself to be photographed at this event. But like Business Insider must have taken it from some stock photo, and like I became like the face of.
Right, without your permission.
Yeah, that was definitely not. I mean, I must have given permission, or I should look into that. But be careful what you sign.
Yeah. Well,
I could take a picture of you here, right? Where I'm sure there's a clearance walking into this that this is getting recorded, and then I could use you where I want. Maybe you'll be the douchey rich guy.
But I think it hits on a very important point where, as creators who are aligning themselves with brands and big productions, you have to be really careful with your image. And if you have no control over where that image is used and how it's used, that can jeopardize your ability to move forward in your career. And that's something that SAG-AFTRA takes really, really seriously. And we're fighting on the legislative front But I mean, for brands, right, Alexandra, do they do a lot of back-end searches? Do they ask you to do? Because I know folks like Disney do a huge, just they go through every background they can on every creator they work with.
I think that they really look to us, at least the brands that we work with, they look to us to kind of vet from a certain criteria standpoint, and we have a pretty comprehensive criteria that we go through. I would say in relation to using the likeness, though, from a brand standpoint, for our team at least, it's working with brands that you really just trust, and it's open communication, and it's making sure that you are having these brands that you work with really, really value those relationships and not exploit them. We put all of the talent that we work with in front of the brand. They all have very open relationships. So it's just about really humanizing the overall experience and making sure that we have open dialogue across the board.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before we open up to some Q&A, I want to talk a little bit about the future, because we obviously don't have a crystal ball, right? But I think we all are trying to work towards something.
I beg to differ. I'm just
Yeah, you might. But where this industry is going, I think everyone in this room is kind of like, what's next? Because every week it changes, right? And it's hard to really understand where we're going. But I think maybe where you think it's going, but also where you hope it's going. Alexandra, I want to start with you.
Yeah, sure. So, clearly from this panel, influencer is not going anywhere. I think Sam mentioned it earlier. It's kind of the original type of advertising. Word of mouth is, I like this product, I'm going to tell my friend tells their friend, etc. I think that paired with, there's a really good stat from Nielsen that's 84% of people trust a recommendation from someone that they feel close to, more so than any other marketing channel. So that could be a family member, a friend, or someone that they feel connected to via social media or the internet. So I think those two pieces really kind of confirm that it's not going to go anywhere. I think we talk a lot about inauthenticity, though, and consumers are catching on, brands are catching on. You mentioned that it damages both sides. So I think my hope is that the industry is going to need to kind of correct itself, and I would hope that, we talk a lot about the idea of really having these brands value these relationships and bring them in much earlier on the planning process. So as of now, some brands use influencer as more of kind of a promotional tool at the end of a campaign. We would like for brands to bring relationships in and really have them consult along the way, gather insights, creative ideation, share information, really just be part of the team overall. And then influencer would grow that way as a part of the larger ecosystem rather than a standalone industry on its own.
That's great.
And Yaza, what do you think the future holds in this space?
Yeah, I sort of agree, and in a way to work with influencers also, I'm thinking for my clothing line, Global Intuition, to be working with influencers in a different way, and to break, the pattern.
Lynette?
Yeah, I think obviously this is just the beginning, which has already been over 10 years, but I think it's really encouraging for myself, I'll speak for myself, that you guys, I went to cosmetology school, so I never thought in a million years that I would be I saw our president just walked in, Harvard graduate, I'm having conversations, and these are things that are happening. Again, I've learned so much, and I'm absorbing so much, and now to be seen as I exit out of IPSI, working on a couple other projects, board of advisors, of, to be seen in that way and in that capacity is really encouraging to me, because I've grown so much from 2007 when I got licensed in cosmetology. Never thought in a million years, one, that I would be sitting here, and two, that I would be just seen at that capacity. So it's really, really encouraging, and obviously that's one side of it. And then just for influencers in general, I think really it's going to be, I'll be bold and say, influencers are the way for all brands to be successful, truly. Obviously it's not just Jennifer Aniston anymore that can talk about living proof hair care. It's got to be an influencer. We know now the authenticity thing comes back around, where it's like Jennifer Aniston got paid, God knows how much to say that. But then there's this influencer that literally loves living proof, or fill in whatever brand. So it's really interesting, the power of a voice. So again, I will leave you with, I'm just really excited to see influencers knowing the power of their voice, understanding and really resonating with that, and making sure that what they're saying is true, authentic, real, all of that.
Sam?
Hey, $207 billion is projected to be spent this year on ad sales, and 107 of that is expected to be in digital. So we're now surpassing that of TV. We're not going anywhere, right? But it doesn't mean you can't leave yourself options. Look what happened with YouTube, look what happened with Vine. Look at emerging markets, look at emerging platforms with 1 billion new middle-class members in India who are going to start consuming, general consumers of content. Saudi Arabia just showed their first movie in 35 years. It was the Emoji Movie, right? So we're not going anywhere. Other markets are emerging. Be prepared to look internationally, look globally, and look at audio. 20% of the country is listening now weekly. A lot of ad spend there. And just be willing to be malleable. Look at your platforms not as your product, but as your ancillary to the product, which is you and your storytelling. So be willing to take that storytelling, adapt it for other platforms, for other mediums, and find how do I take this live? 63% of what kids spend their money on is live experiential and like merch and accessories. So they're getting out of the house. They're not watching their TVs. They're going places. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for your act? Just be willing to kind of amoeba-like move with the industry, because it's changing daily. But the thing that doesn't change is good storytelling and authenticity.
Good.
And lastly, Drew.
Well, listen, what was really exciting about this industry when we started Tube Felt in the Streamy Awards like a decade ago was that if you were a creative person, you needed someone else's permission to connect with people. So you needed to audition, or you needed to sell a script, or you needed to know somebody, and you needed to fight against someone else's notion of what was going to resonate. And you didn't, there was no experimentation, and there was no throwing it up against the wall, and there was no this sort of democratic style evolution. And I think that was really appealing like that, and I think there's a risk that isn't something that is going to stay forever and that we're taking for granted. I think in this 10 years we've seen a lot of consolidation in the space. I mean, just looking back, you've seen Strike TV and Maker TV and Blip and Daily Motion and Snapchat and Periscope and Musical.ly and Lively and LiveMe and right and man, Musical.ly stars were on the cover of Billboard magazine. Now Musical.ly doesn't exist. And these players have emerged. I mean, we had Snapchat, and then Instagram and Facebook came and tried to clobber that. And I think brands were always going with whoever was hot, so they relied on influencers, people who were fighting the fight and rising to the top, and then they just paired with them. And it's huge money, big business. But as that sort of rapid evolution starts to slow down, there's going to be predictable formulas. And brands can start becoming strategic in their way of approaching content, and the brands can become the influencers, where they have complete control. Or they're going to hire up and tap people just like a network would to hire talent for their studios. And then the brands are the ones that are going to have the relationships with the platforms, and the brands are going to be the ones that are controlling the talent and the creative. And the brands can become the influencers. Think about Kim Kardashian as a brand selling her own product. Is she a brand? Is she an influencer? Is there a difference? Is there a line? So I think it's really a moment right now where, as creative community, we need to really get our shit together and really kind of understand how we are all in this together, as opposed to these individuals all working sort of as a movement, sort of unorganized, but in a way where we're all together, because it's going to come to a point where we're not going to have this type of independence, and it's going to be the same story where you're going to have to be knocking on someone's door to be able to reach audiences. And if you don't fit into the mold, right, you're going to be shut out.
On that happy note, does anyone have any questions? We have a few minutes left. I want to open it up. I see a question over here.
So with the constant change, like for folks just starting out, and maybe you want to create a YouTube channel, and you literally have just some very basic equipment from Amazon and like your living room, I mean, what sort of, is it better to just kind of start creating and just know it's not going to look professional, it's not going to be branded beautifully, and just put it out there?
100%.
Okay.
Like, I think that,
Because even though it looks ghetto and there's like, you know.
like, I think Gary Vee said, you know, speed beats perfection. Pardon?
So the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. She said,
Do you mind?
is it better to just, what, you're the
Go-
moderator.
no, you
Is it better
do
just
it.
to put something out there, or, you know, if I don't have a lot of resources? I think absolutely, because the great thing about the internet is there's no, like, colossal failures, because it's just no one notices it. Right, so if it's bad or whatever, or however you want to call that, it's not going to be seen, so who cares? It's not like some huge, I don't know, huge award show that you're putting on in a week and you're promoting it, and if it doesn't work out, you can go crazy. But it's amazing the amount of experimentation that you can have. And we had a series that we're developing, a two-filter called First Drafts, where if you look at, it's called like the first videos of some of the biggest stars on YouTube, you look at it, you're like, I can do that. Because it's like so basic. You can see the talent in the person for sure, and you can believe it, but it's not good. I mean, it's like, you know, the technology was bad back then. Everything's bad back then. We have this thing where, like, we do the millionaires, and we just went back just to look at, like, all the people who've just hit $1 million. And you look at, like, Hannah Hart when she hit $1 million, or Tyler Oakley, and you look at them, and the headshots that they're submitting are like literally like on the street blurry. It's like they've evolved so much. So I know it can be very intimidating to see the polished, you know, 10 million